discuss first, Richard?
Well, this is going to kind of piggyback on her review fairly well. It's another 80s film. And this film will piss off all literalists. If you're a literal thinker or if you have genre expectations, you're going to leave this saying, what the fuck did I just watch? The film is Wolf's Hole by Vera Chytilova, a Czech director, best known for her film Daisies from 1966, avant-garde feminist manifesto that definitely pissed off the literalist Soviets and
Oh
Czech
yeah.
Politburo in Czechoslovakia. They didn't like the film at all, and they canned it. They wouldn't let it be seen for a long time.
Oh
Uh,
man.
she's kind of an anomaly as a female director. There weren't a lot of them. There were some, but not a lot in Eastern Europe. And she made something different in I think 1962. Then she made Daisies in 66. And
That was
then she
ahead
made
of its
Queen
time,
in
man.
'69. I can't remember what it was, but by then the liberalization that had come about in what they called the Prague Spring, it had thawed, and the Soviets clamped down, and so did the
Hmm.
Czech authorities. So they weren't making a lot of forward-thinking films or films that were avant-garde or critical of society. So she kind of went underground. uh, she and her husband just spent their time raising their kids. But after a while, Daisy's had a reputation, and so people in the West were like wanting to see her films. So they started letting her make films again. And she made one called Prefab Story that's a really funny critique of the sort of throwaway society that the Marxist uh, culture had brought about. This kind of uh, but to Wolf's Hall came around in 1986, and I would love to know what her thought process was in making this film, because to describe the film, you sit down, you watch it, and you have an expectation of it of being a horror film, and at some point you go, "Oh, this is a slasher film." And then you realize, well, no, this isn't a slasher film. This is something else. And I'll give you a synopsis and tell you what I'm talking about. It starts out there are these group of 11 young Czech high school students, and they're at a train station. And much like Willy Wonka, they've all been given a ticket. They were inexplicably given a ticket for a a skiing a skiing workshop. And so they all show up with their parents, and they're kind of as you would have in a slasher film. They're a disparate group of you have these kind of quirky girl twins. You have a jock, you have a marginalized Romani ethnic minority girl, and you have different kinds of personalities that are brought together. You have kind of a loser nerd guy that's oppressed by his father. And so they show up, and they're met at the station by a man who calls himself Father, and his two kind of younger assistants who are more college age than high school, a little bit older than the students. And their names are Dingo and Babetta. And they just, at first, you sort of, they seem a little off. Uh, and they go to this very isolated ski lodge in a place ominously titled Wolf's Hole, or it could also be translated as Wolf's Lair. So they're going off to this skiing seminar or whatever workshop in a place called Wolf's Lair, way out in the middle of nowhere, completely surrounded by snow. And they get there, and slowly it just seems more and more off. The father and his two assistants just, they keep making all these strange comments, and um, they kind of set them up. They're sort of psychologically testing them and pitting them against one another. And at one point they say, well, there's 11 of you here. There's only supposed to be 10 of you. One of you is an intruder. And we got to find out who this intruder is. Have you seen this film, Henry?
No, I read about it earlier today to
Oh,
prep for
okay.
this a little bit.
And they said one of you is an intruder, and we got to find out who this intruder is, because there's only food enough for 10 people. And so
What a
they
setup.
start, kind of interrogation kind of tactics. And really, I think that again, I'd love to know her thought process in making this film, because it seems to be a critique of the sort of young pioneer youth group that they had in the communist societies, where they had these sort of Boy Scout kind of groups, but they were kind of manipulated by these party officials and indoctrinated. So I think there's an element of that. There's definitely her intent is satire, because at this point she was, making films, being heavily watched, and whatever she snuck in, she had to kind of sneak in under the wire, not overt criticism of the state. And so at a certain point, the father says, well, what if we were aliens? Because they're asking a lot of these questions. What's going on? What? And they said, well, what if we were aliens? And we've come here to basically take over the world, take over your planet. So they drop all these like insinuations or statements that they're aliens, and the viewer is saying, well, there's something else going on here. They're fucking with their heads. This is another trick, but to because there's a lot of ambiguity. Are they aliens? Are they not aliens? Or what are they here? What are they here for? What are they doing to these kids? And you've come in here with this expectation. Well, this is a slasher film because all the tropes are there, all the cliches are there, and you start expecting the kids to drop one by one because they're going to be looking
Mm.
for the intruder. So the intruder, the implication is that the intruder is a murderer or something. So, but she does all these like strange plot twists, and um, there are scenes of the father and the two assistants will go out and writhe around in the snow, just like flopping around, kind of like the thing in the thing from another world, just like that. And so there's a clue that these things are really actually extraterrestrials. They're not just communist officials that are messing with. They're not psychopaths. They're actually something deeper and more unworldly is going on here. And I won't give too many spoilers, but there is a shock surprise ending there that's not at all what you suspect. And if you've come here for a slasher film, there's no slashing going on except psychologically. There's a lot of psychological slashing going on, a lot of psychological violence, manipulation,
Psychotic
and
behavior.
head fucking going on in this film. Uh, and the cast is really good. The father is the only person I looked at that IMDb list of any kind. The young actors seem to be more or less amateur actors, and they're actually pretty good in this. Uh, so it's a science for me. It's successful science fiction because I love science fiction novels, especially where the aliens are unknowable, their motives are unknowable. We don't know really what their motives are, and have the aliens possessed humans? Are these humans and alien guys? What's going on here? And a lot of things are never fully answered. And again, to me, it was successful for me. I had a good time reading, viewer reviews on various sites, and a
Okay.
lot of people were really pissed off, saying this is a slasher film, but there's no blood, there's no sex. What's going on? Why did I watch this fucking thing? And then, but some people are getting it. Some people are realizing, they know her background. They know that this is satire.
Hmm.
This is not, uh, and I don't know how she got to make this film or how it was received. A lot of her films or later films, there's not a lot of material out there about how they were received or how they were made. They typically focus on her career of the late '60s, but it's definitely worth watching if you like films that are going to keep you guessing. This one will keep you guessing. And
Mhm.
again, like the film Come and See that I reviewed a few episodes ago, the
I,
soundtrack is amazing. It's an eerie soundscape, and th she did another film called Calamity about a group of people that are trapped in a snow avalanche in a train. And so she's really good at making snow look ominous, which is maybe a Czech thing because I've seen a lot of Czech films where snow is kind of like a character and not a positive character.
Right.
Uh, but anyway, long story made short, it's a great film. I recommend it, and I recommend all of
Cool.
her films.
Cool.
So
I've
yeah.
only seen Days and stuff.
Daisies is amazing. We won't go too deep into that, but that was a film that I got a hold of. It had a reputation,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's very overtly avant-garde, and like Wolf's Hole, which is kind of very subtly avant-garde. Um, so yeah, check her out. She's an awesome director. She's a feminist that has a lot to say about how women are treated, and a lot about women how women are used in authoritarian political landscapes. So
Mm,
yeah.
that's cool, man. So, Bill,
Ah,
would you like to?
um, well, the two that I have, if I get to both of them, are films that I think when they came out, they were science fiction. One of them is no longer science fiction, really, and the other one is shortly, in probably in my lifetime, will stop being science fiction. So I think I'm going to do that one first.
Okay.
Gattaca.
Oh yeah.
Gattaca. This is a film I show my students
Oh, wow.
if I have any leftover time at the end of the year, because I think I like it. It's a smart movie. It's science fiction with about ideas. There's not a lot of shootouts. There's a little bit of action, but not really a whole lot. It's about characters and ideas, kind of movies I wish they made more of.
Mm-hmm.
And the premise, if people haven't seen it, is a very interesting one. It's set in a very near future. Technology is pretty recognizable. Cars are a little fancier looking. The architecture is a little more spare. It's neat. Things look cleaner. Everything's electric. But the big difference is the way humans are born, or more accurately, conceived. When you decide to have a child, most people, even those who seem to be comfortably middle class, you go to a doctor, they extract all the eggs from the woman, they mix it with a pile of man's sperm, get about 20 or 30 viable embryos, and then they're able, which of course is everything they can do now. The thing they can't do now, but will be able to do, is they're able to extract a cell or two and figure out exactly what you're going to get. I mean, obviously, boys, girls, that's easy. We can do that now, but they can actually look at what is the likelihood of this embryo developing into a person of above average intelligence? What are the good and bad features that they have? And then, like any sane person, you would probably choose, once you decide, I think we'd like to have a daughter this time, they could freeze the others, discard the obvious defective ones, and you pick the best kid you could possibly have. And as the guy says, is like, we're not playing God here, really. These are your children. Mm-hmm. These are your children. They're just the best kids you could ever have. You'd have to have 100 kids to get this one here. And what are the odds? Now, the premise of the movie is that we're following a young man who was not born that. He was born the old-fashioned way. His mom got knocked up in the back of a DeSoto or something, and he's got issues. He has a bad heart. He's got all kinds of things. He physically is not that great. Now, mentally, he's sharp as a tack, and he's got tremendous drive. He wants to be an astronaut. The odds of him being an astronaut are pretty much slim and none. Although the movie goes to great lengths to say it is illegal to discriminate against the normals, what they call the invalids. That doesn't mean anything, because as soon as you go for a job interview, they take a saliva test to make sure you're not on drugs, and they also take a look at your DNA, and that's that. So he hooks up with a man who is one of these superior superhumans, but is crippled. And so he sells him his DNA, skin samples, urine, blood samples, and everything, and is able to, using these things, get past all the various safeguards they have to make sure that the company has the right kind of people. So he's taking over this identity. And he is on his way to becoming an astronaut to go to Titan. That's the whole premise. The first part of the movie takes a tremendous amount of time world building, and usually that's like kryptonite to me. I usually hate it. I hate it in books, I hate it in comics, I hate it in movies, when these people just fall so in love with their world building. And I do understand as a writer, you've spent all this time thinking in your head, and you've got this and everything, but there's a reason why Tolkien didn't publish that stuff. It got published after he died. It's not a story. It's not fun to read all this stuff unless you are totally into that thing, which I guess there are enough people to make it successful.
Not a fan of Sanderson, I'm guessing.
I mean, he's, if it can be done well, it is good. And it just has to be done well. I prefer it when it's doled out logically. I was just talking to another writer about this, and I said, one of the reasons I love the Game of Thrones series is that they don't spend the first 3 episodes talking about dragons. Dragons aren't around anymore. There's no reason to be talking about them. We get the history of why dragons are a big deal with people talking about it when it comes up in conversation.
Yeah.
And it does so organically. That's really the way to do it. But I got to say, they do a good job here because it's a compelling story and it's interesting and it's very understandable. And I don't want to spoil things and everything. There's someone's murdered. The police are on the case, and this guy's living in terror that they're going to find him out because he's living a lie. And it's very easy. It could just be, the wrong person at the wrong time. He's got this big subterfuge. He's got contacts in his eyes to change his eye color. He had his legs extended to be the right height of this person, which is excruciating. Tony Shalhoub has a small but really good role in this as a broker, the guys who make the deals between people who are trying to do all this. It's just got great stuff. But here's what I find fascinating about it. We are clearly meant to be on the side of this guy, and we are, because he's a good character, and he did not ask to be born into this situation. This situation is extremely unfair. It goes against everything we've been taught, that all people are created equal, which of course is not true, but it is fair to say all of us had an equal shot at the genetic dice.
There you go.
We have no control. We get some genes from mom, we get some genes from dad. Sometimes we get 2 bad genes, and that's not good. Sometimes we just get lucky. There's a lot of luck of the draw there. Now, what happens after that is not always fair, but the technique is basically fair. But what happens when it no longer is? Because I'll tell you, this technology is so likely to happen. Mm-hmm. It would not shock the hell out of me if it turns out it's already happened and the elite who use it have just been keeping that under the wraps. I don't think so, because there's too much money to be made in it. And we're supposed to think, boy, this is a terrible thing. And I'm going to call bullshit on that. If there were a pill that any of us could have, taken, or any of our moms could have taken, that would have guaranteed that we would be born free of genetic defects, with above average intelligence and good looks, and all the other things that you wish when you close your eyes and you imagine what your child could be. Anyone who didn't take that pill should not have children. You would consider that person a bad person. If I heard some woman now saying, "Oh, I don't take prenatal vitamins," we're just going to roll the dice. My great grandmother didn't have prenatal vitamins. You'd look at her like she was an idiot. If someone said, "I'm not going to take vaccines," that's natural selection, nature's way of thinning out the herd. You'd be like, take her existing children away. Call social services. So tell me what the difference is. What's the difference? This one's just this is just going a little bit too far, that we're not just putting our finger on the scales here. We're actually just dropping a brick right on it. Of course you would do that. Absolutely. I love my girls. I love both my girls. Only one of them is actually genetically. I keep forgetting my first daughter's adopted. I totally forget that so often.
Yeah.
We'll be having a conversation. It's like, well, you should probably get that diabetes checked out. It's like, oh, wait a minute. No, you're fine. But I love them as they are. And there's the thing. My girls are wonderful. They're not perfect. Neither was their mom. Neither am I. Under this scenario, none of us probably would have been born. But whoever was born, I'd still love. I mean, of course you would want your kids to have all those advantages. It creates a terrible thing. It creates a society that is no longer even remotely equal. Because there will be, in most of these movies, like, the master race, Hitler's master race, the leaders of the Third Reich were a bunch of homunculi. They were the antithesis of a superior race. You look at them, it's like, oh yeah, we want a bunch of Goebbels running around. That's
right.
Just like Klansmen are mostly
ugly,
inbred.
homely, ugly, weak-looking, one leg longer than the other, running in circles. I mean, no, whatever.
But at least they're not fill in the blank minority.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Under this scenario, there would be a master race. There would be people who, without question, are going to be genetically superior. They're going to be above average. And the longer this goes on, the higher the average gets.
Well, we already do that to a certain extent when you have people in Hollywood who are perfect men, perfect woman. They combine, have perfect children. And we all sit out here and we enjoy them. But that, and we see it with sports people and performers. It's like these people who have been elevated in the genetic lottery with certain talent and attractiveness that get drawn together with someone else who won the genetic lottery, right? And then they produce children from the genetic lottery who start getting together with other children from the genetic. So
of course. So
we actually see it playing out right in front of us.
Well, and we also see,
No,
I was going to say, we also see the backlash against that. This whole nepo baby,
exactly, which is just jealousy, is it not?
Oh, it's the most. Well, it is envy distilled to a crystalline clarity. It's like, oh my God, I cannot believe that this person helped their child.
Well, just because we're envious doesn't mean the nepotism is right. I mean,
it also doesn't mean, but it also doesn't mean it's wrong. I mean, if I had an opportunity to get my kid a job, by just calling somebody and saying, hey,
we're talking about powerful people whose kids aren't all that great usually as their parents.
But nobody's that great in Hollywood. Listen, I could go to any Starbucks in Hollywood and find a barista who has just as much talent, whoever the it girl of the year is. If Tom Cruise came out and said, I am not going to lift a goddamn finger to help my child who, against all advice, has decided to go into show business, they're going to go to the casting couch and work their way up, the same way, blah, blah, blah. My opinion of Tom Cruise, already not high, would plunge to unbelievable depths. The nepo baby. Goddamn. First of all, anyone who goes on the internet and complains about anything, about the unfairness of life, has got to remember that the fact that they are on the internet in America complaining about something, they are in the top 1% of Earth. They are the blessed. The least among us here are better off than the above average person in some god awful third world country. I mean, if that really upsets them that some people are getting an unfair leg up in life, go take a look in the mirror, because that applies to literally everyone. It's just showmanship.
Yeah.
But back to Gattaca. So I like this movie. It's low budget, but they do a lot with a low budget. It's got a lot of style. It's got kind of a noirish thing.
Doesn't it have Ethan Hawke in it?
Ethan Hawke, who's
and
terrific.
Jude Law. It was the first time I ever saw him.
Absolutely fantastic.
He's been on a roll lately, last few years, man.
And Uma Thurman, who can be wonderful, and she's good in this. It's an interesting movie. The bad guys, when you think about it, are not all that bad. The good guys have flaws. It's interesting, but it does, overall, it's a good message. The best person in the movie, the real hero of the movie, doesn't show up until virtually at the very end. And it's one of these superior people. And by the way, these people are not like Supermen. They're just, like the smartest guy in the room, except now the whole room is the smartest guys. And they're going to live a long time. They're going to live long, healthy lives, which, again, if there were a pill that we could have taken when we were all infants that would guarantee I didn't get type 2 diabetes, nobody has any, mental illness, nobody has any of these things that we did not ask for, did not deserve, but ended up with anyway, of course we would have taken that pill. My parents would have wrapped it in bacon and shoved it down my throat, as any good parent would.
Right.
That's what they are. And don't we want that? And again, aren't we doing it whether we say so or not? I mean, it's an unpleasant topic, but we are eliminating some of the most obvious defects. They do that pretty early in a pregnancy. I mean, they don't necessarily eliminate it, but they give you the information and then let you make that decision. And there used to be a lot more people with Down syndrome than there are now.
There used to be a lot more people like the circus freaks. I mean, really radically deformed.
Yeah, and would we want to go back to that? The true state of the true state of humanity is pretty rough. It's a pretty rough one. If you go to third world countries, you'll see what happens when you don't have the advantages of prenatal vitamins and everything else. So that's the kind of science fiction I really like. It's the kind that makes you think. And makes you think maybe the position that you have at the beginning may not be the right position. But
it's always good to see another view.
Yeah, and that, but you think about it some more, and you're like, well, this is an unworkable scenario. But then comes the realization that it's going to have to be workable because it's going to happen. This is not like flying cars or telepathy, or the Earth gets covered in water, so we develop web fingers because that's how evolution works. It's none of that nonsense that you have there. This is something that is going to happen. The only thing that's going to stop it is an asteroid hitting us, or we blow ourselves up in a nuclear war or something. But Gattaca is going to happen, and we probably should start contemplating some of the necessary, if there's any possible ways of mitigating the harm as we transfer from a pre-Gattaca society to a post-Gattaca society.
I'd be striking a balance, to be sure.
Right.
As I recall, also Gattaca wasn't much of a box office hit, right? It was
the,
kind
the
of
director. The director is known for making thoughtful science fiction movies that don't draw a dime.
Who's the director?
I will tell you because I've got this.
Because I forgot that.
Directed by Andrew Niccol.
Oh yeah.
Sort of know who he is.
He's done some interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And that came out in the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
1997.
Yeah.
So yeah, around the Matrix time.
And a couple of years before Matrix, I would actually say that there's like a couple of companion movies that are really good with Gattaca. Like if you get into that mode, Minority Report's a good one, which came just a few years after, but also the movie Never Let Me Go, which is about clones.
Oh yes, yeah, you're absolutely right.
Carey Mulligan, right. Andrew Garfield, Keira Knightley. Anyway, those three movies together for me are like a really good, thought-provoking film-going experience about the near future kind of a thing. It's like there's the 70s dystopian type stuff. You can go to Soylent Green and stuff like that. But then there's these which are a little different and working with the technology of the modern day. And I think Gattaca, great, and a great use of being a low budget movie, and then go to Minority Report, huge budget, and then back to Never Let Me Go, which is low budget again. And I think all three were like really good thought provoking things that kind of pick apart sort of the same themes a lot.
Good call.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you have any final thoughts, Bill?
No, go see it. It's a good film.
Yeah. And I think you can get it pretty cheap,
oh yeah,
buy a copy.
They're giving it away. Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I keep thinking I need to get a copy of Gattaca, and I keep for not doing it, and I
Probably
should.
$10 on Blu-ray now.
Yeah.
I like showing it to my students, and there's always the one kid that makes me, gives me a little hope for the world when someone says, what does Gattaca even mean? Because the word never comes up once in the movie, as far as I know. And there's maybe that one kid who's paying attention. It's like, I think it's like DNA. And you're like, someone was paying attention. Yes. Those are the four bases, G, A, T, and C.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
I didn't either. Yeah, I learned something new.
We're all learning things tonight. So, Chuck, what do you have to teach us?
All right. Well, if I can teach you anything, my first movie is Silent Running from 1972. And this movie was directed by Douglas Trumbull.
Yeah.
And I believe
talented
very talented dude.
Yeah. I think it was the first movie he ever did.
It is.
Only movie he ever directed.
No, he directed Brainstorm.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he did that.
I love Brainstorm.
But yeah,
personally.
Nice Blu-ray, by the way, out from Arrow Films.
You've got the Arrow. Almost nabbed it, never did. Go ahead, Chuck.
Oh, okay. Movie stars Bruce Dern as a guy named Freeman Lowell, who's a botanist on a ship called the Valley Forge, a spaceship that's kind of orbiting around. I think there are like 8 of them or something to that effect. It's been years since I've seen this. But just very much kind of dystopian. The Valley Forge is part of a fleet of American Airlines space freighters. And they're basically, Earth at this point is without vegetation. They're without any kind of flora and fauna. And they've got these spaceships orbiting around that have these pods or these domes that have little forests in them. And they're all kind of being taken care of. They're no longer sustainable on Earth. And Freeman Lowell is on the ship with, I think, five other guys who are running the ship. And he's the guy who takes care of these little forests in the domes, and he's very dedicated to it, cares a lot about it. The other guys kind of don't give a shit. They're kind of very callously, driving the little four-wheelers around, and
they're all bros.
They're all bros. They're all kind of creating chaos.
Turns like the hippie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. And I think eventually they get the order from Earth that their mission's over. They got to jettison these pods into the sun or whatever, and come back home. And all the other guys on the ship are just like, yeehaw, this shitty detail is over and we get to go home. And Lowell is just like, oh my God, no. And so as they're getting ready to decommission or, jettison the pods and get home, he struggles, is fighting one guy over it, ends up killing him, and I think somehow sabotaging it so all the other guys on the ship get killed and he's left orbiting around with this one pod.
Yeah, he doesn't blow apart in the ship. The people either die or they're marooned or whatever. While he's got the pod.
Yeah, he's got the pod. He's got the little dome that he's taking care of. He's got these 3 drones, really, these 3 robots, and it's kind of like he names them. They're like barely have anything resembling a personality. They're basically like metal boxes with legs walking around, and he reroutes them or reprograms them to take care of the forests, and he calls them Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and they start becoming they've got no personality to speak of, but they become kind of endearing after a while. Just you'd see that maybe panning out later on into like R2-D2 or something.
Those 3 are great actors, I have to say.
Yeah, they're definitely proto R2-D2.
Yeah,
he's a good actor too.
Yeah, Kenny Baker. But so they're all just kind of walking around, doing this. I think over the course of the movie, he tries to deal with various problems, and I think one of the robots gets killed or killed. I don't know, gets destroyed.
Yeah,
or like another one gets damaged or something.
It's sad.
Yeah, it ends up being very sad. He's out there alone on his ship, and just eventually the U.S. are calling out to him. They're trying to reach him, and they're just, come on, it's time to come in. We found you, thank God. Jettison your forest and let's get the hell out of here. And long story short, he ends up pretty much blowing himself up, destroying the ship, and just letting this little forest float around in space for the rest of eternity or whatever, with these little robots kind of puttering around taking care of things. And that's how that ends. And
brilliant movie.
I find it very affecting. I think I'm trying to recall if I watched that in the 80s or the 90s. I remember I watched it with my mother. But and she was really affected by it, and so was I. And
I like the Joan Baez song at the end.
Oh yeah, I don't even remember it, but
you got to rewatch it.
That was actually a big.
It's been a while.
When that movie came out, I remember seeing the ads for it on TV. I didn't see it in the theater until way later, but that was a big selling point. Hear Joan Baez sing.
Yeah,
I know.
Hard to believe, but that was a major.
So
that's as I mentioned in another one. I saw it with the Ground Star Conspiracy in a double feature.
Yeah,
and I had no preconceived notions about what it was going to be. It went in totally cold, and I loved it. My brother and I loved it.
Two of our movies. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's great scenes of him, when he's on his own, losing his mind essentially. Not that he was always kind of cracked to begin with.
Hey,
Yeah.
Bruce Dern.
Playing
Come on.
cards with the drones.
Yeah, he's got to be cracked.
What do you have?
No, I don't know. I
That's
think it's like
trash.
having pets. I didn't see him as cracked. I felt like the other
Well,
people were cracked because
Well, yeah, but I mean,
Fragile. Let's put
okay,
it
I have
that
mental
way.
illness,
Yeah,
so
there
I'll
you
just
go,
go ahead
yeah.
and say, in my
also,
opinion.
even when I was a kid, it took him way too long to figure out the reason the plants were dying was they weren't getting enough sun. He's supposed to be a freaking botanist.
Well, that's a
Right.
good point.
Well,
At least he wasn't watering with Gatorade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to tell the man his business, but
Well, I
Get
think
those electrolytes in there.
those among us who collect should all follow Keith's
That's
example
what
and
plants
get that
crave.
era Blu-ray of it.
yeah, it's just really packed with extras and stuff, and two different audio commentaries on it. So you get the one with Trumbull and Dern, but you also get one with Kim Newman and somebody else talking.
Oh,
I mean, it's just really, and Bruce Dern really he just carries on so much, like it's his favorite thing
He's
he
a cool dude.
ever did.
That was
kind
the
of.
first time I ever noticed him in a film, and he carries that film very well.
That's how I knew who he was, because it was a science fiction film when I was a little kid, and
Uh-huh.
I knew my parents were going to take me to see it, and because it didn't look like it had a lot of action, so my dad probably it didn't have a lot of aliens. It didn't seem like, so I just didn't think much of it. But it's one of the examples of one of these movies we're covering that, despite its uniqueness and eccentricity and unmarkability, it had a huge distribution. Everyone knew about it. I mean, I think they were trying to make it a hit, and I don't know how it actually did money wise, but then it kind of sank into oblivion, and now it's like a cult hit.
Well,
Classic.
it was one of those movies that was caught up, and you get this from the commentary. The studio was doing this thing trying to appeal to like the younger audience at that time, and they decided to go and reach out and find young filmmakers and give them $1 million and let them make a movie. And Silent Running was one of those. It came to Doug Trumbull, said, "Here's $1 million, make a movie."
But Trumbull had a resume, though.
And that, Dennis Hopper, they did the same thing and made $1 million, made a movie. I think Peter Fonda did one, took the $1 million, made a movie. So there's apparently there was 12 of them, I think, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah.
And they had a pretty good success rate.
They were all great.
With the first batch, it was usually the second batch where these filmmakers realized I could take half of that million and put it up my nose.
Yeah.
So you get Easy Rider, and then you're like, wow, we cracked. Hollywood is always looking for that.
Easy Rider made a fortune.
They made a fortune, but then they made the last movie, and
I have very mixed feelings about the last movie. I'll have to watch it yet again one day. I go back and forth between really loving it, thinking it's okay, and kind of disliking it. So I don't know where I'm at now.
I've still never seen that.
I respect it. I respect it. I think if it had a stronger, even though it's not really a narrative film and it's not supposed to be. Well, I mean, Jodorowsky's movies are narrative films. I mean, even though they're totally avant-garde, they do tell stories, but it's not really trying to tell much of a story. I think if they tightened that up, I think, given Kansas more purpose or more dimension. I mean, he's a great actor. Why not? But he's not always. He can be a good writer, but yeah, that was a mixed bag. But Henry Fonda. So we covered one of those. We covered Idaho Transfer. That was very low budget, but of course, I love Idaho Transfer. The people who love it. It's just very still unknown. But The Hired Hand that Peter Fonda did first has gotten a lot of respect as like one of the greatest Westerns in the last however many years. So that's a cool program. And, Trumbull did he did effects for 2001.
Right.
So
that's what got him this job.
So these were all people who were kind of in Hollywood, but they hadn't directed any movies yet.
And then he saved Star Trek. He literally saved Star Trek, the motion picture, at the last minute.
Yeah. Yeah. He worked on Star Wars too, and a lot.
You know what I would kill?
Brainstorm.
Yeah, I'd love to. I would kill to see. It's sort of legend in the town, but they hired, I think his name was Robert Abel, who did those amazing Levi's jeans ads. And if you're old enough to be me, and you want to just go back in time, Go on YouTube and look up old 70s Levi's jeans.
I remember those. Yeah.
They were freaking amazing. They just,
They were
and so,
psychedelic.
yeah,
Absolutely
incredible.
psychedelic.
Just eye candy, gorgeous. And they hired the guy, figured, well, he could do for our movie what he did for jean ads. And they spent a whole lot of money and apparently did not have a single foot of usable footage. But I would love
Oh,
to
he
see
didn't finish that
that
movie.
footage.
No.
Oh no, they canned him because after a year, and I mean they spent millions, probably more than just about any movie had ever
And
spent.
they had a
nothing.
hard deadline for release.
Oh yeah, they were going to lose. I mean, okay, so Hollywood has always been run by idiots. That's just a hard and fast truth. Yeah, they sold this thing. It had to be done by this date. That movie went out. There was still like wiping water off.
Yeah,
the
they said that. Yeah, they said
was,
literally theaters were getting those prints still wet.
yeah,
Yeah.
just
Good Lord.
They were overnighting them.
and
Well-
Trumbull did a fantastic job of saving it.
Trumbull's awesome.
And for that he made a bunch of them. They coughed up a ton load of money to him, and he made them promise that he could direct Brainstorm.
Brainstorm is a really, really deep movie because
That's
It's a
probably
shame.
worth a look at
if
too.
that's
It
one
is.
we should talk about sometime
Yeah.
because the twist to me, spoiler, I don't know if it's a spoiler because it's not at the end, but to me, what it pivots around emotionally is not Christopher Walken wanting to have virtual reality or him and Natalie Wood, but it's
Mhm.
his friendship with Louise Fletcher.
Yeah.
And he wants to go back and take the virtual reality stuff back from the corporation or whoever took
Mhm.
it. But you know why? You remember why he wants to do it? Because she died while she had it on and she experienced death, and he wanted to be close to her again and also see what that was like. But he loved her, and he never really said, well, he does kind of say it, but I just thought that was interesting because that kind of broke what you expect is going to happen. I just thought it was great, but Walken was on top of everything
Yeah.
back then.